Okay, so I'm going to walk you guys through how the seasons are created. So here we have the Earth with the equator running from west to east, and it splits the Earth into the northern and the southern hemispheres. The Earth's axis is right here. It's the imaginary line that runs from the North Pole to the South Pole. And as you guys can see, ours is tilted at 23.5 degrees. So if it were not tilted, it would run straight up and down like this, but it is at 23.5 degrees, and it is always tilted at that angle. So you can think of this as a stick that we rotate on, like a rotisserie chicken from Costco. And the tilt of the axis is the reason for the seasons. So our axis is always tilted that way. So here you have the orange star, which is Hawaii, and it's right above the equator. And the Earth spins on its axis counterclockwise. And as it does so, we go from day into night. So right now, that orange star is heading into the side that's facing away from the sun. So it's heading into nighttime. That is sunset. Now we're heading into the side that's lit by the sun, and this is our sunrise. So, this is why we say the sun rises in the east, because it's the eastern side that gets to see the sun first. And the sun sets in the west, because that is the last part of our islands to see the sun. And it takes 24 hours for the Earth to rotate on its axis. So, as you guys can see here in this first season, you'll see that the northern and southern hemispheres are unequally lit, and this is due to the tilt of the Earth's axis. The northern hemisphere is about two-thirds lit, so most of their 24-hour day is spent in the light, and the southern hemisphere is only about one-third lit, so most of their time is spent in the darkness. The northern hemisphere is also getting more direct sunlight, as you guys can see this bright spot right here. So the sun's radiation hits it at a 90-degree angle, so it's very concentrated. It lights up a small area, and so it heats up faster. The opposite is true of the poles, where the light is spread out more. So as we revolve around the Earth, we see that actually half of the Earth is lit at any point in time. But because of that tilt of the Earth's axis, the hemispheres themselves are unequally lit. And that's why we have summer right now, because most of the northern hemisphere is lit up and it's receiving more intense sunlight. And the southern hemisphere has winter because only a little bit of it is lit up and it's receiving indirect light. Here you can see that both hemispheres are equally lit, both get the same amount of sun and the same amount of direct and indirect light. Both hemispheres are also about half lit, so both hemispheres get about 12 hours of daylight. So for us in the northern hemisphere, it's fall. Our days are starting to get shorter since only half our hemisphere is lit up, and we're now sharing the direct sun with the southern hemisphere as well. So that makes us start to cool off. The southern hemisphere is the opposite. They just had winter with shorter days, so now their days are actually getting longer with about 12 hours of sunlight, and they're starting to warm up. So now they have spring. And as you guys can see, as we revolve around the Earth, half of the Earth is in the daylight and half of the Earth is in the nighttime. So the Earth's axis doesn't affect the hemispheres too much from this angle and this point in our orbit around the sun. Even at the North and South Pole, they each get 12 hours of daylight because you can see half of it is in the light and half of it is in the dark. In this position, now only a third of the northern hemisphere is lit up and two-thirds of it is in darkness. So we spend most of our time in the nighttime. Our days are really short. We're also getting less direct sunlight. And so that means we have less time to heat up. Our sun is less intense, and therefore it's winter for us. The opposite is true of the southern hemisphere. Two-thirds of it is lit up, and one-third of it is in the dark. And so they have longer days. And as you can see, they have more intense light, more direct sunlight. So they have more time to heat up. Their sun is more intense, and therefore they have summer while we have winter. And again, as we revolve around the Earth, we can see that only half of it is lit up. But because of the tilt of the Earth's axis, the hemispheres are unequally lit. As you guys can see, the North Pole spends all of its time in the dark, 24 hours of darkness, while the South Pole, right here, gets 24 hours of sunlight in the summertime. So that's why we have winter while they have summer. And this is the last season here. We've now moved into spring.